What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit. And today, we're going to be doing it a little bit different than we normally do. We're going to be doing a combined episode. It's launch week, including me. Well, I was trying to play. This is Wednesday morning. I couldn't get in the servers. Obviously, on Overwatch 2, we had the DDoS attacks and all that stuff. So by the time I got on, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I went on, looked around. It looked pretty cool. Anyway, so since everybody's playing, trying to at least, I wanted to put it down to one episode so we all can play and enjoy, especially me. And, we're all going to watch Overwatch League this week, so I wanted to talk some about it. Do a little quick recap of last week, hit into the standings and preview a couple things for next week. Just talking about playoff standings, predictions, of course, at the end. We'll do our pick'ems. And so it's going to be a little bit longer than normal because I'm doing a combined episode. I usually like doing 2 episodes a week. We'll get back to that next week after we've all played a little bit. And we're in the final week of the regular season, getting ramped up for playoffs and all that kind of stuff. Before we get into that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. Thanks to all you guys that have been supporting me for either one day or for 5 years. It's greatly appreciated. If you're new, just checking me out, normally I do 2 episodes to 3 episodes a week, depending on what's going on. 99% of the time, it's Overwatch League centric. We'll talk a little bit more about Overwatch 2 in general once I get to play it a little bit more or actually play a match. I'm not the greatest at the game, but I love it. And, I'll give you some of my thoughts on all that. Next week, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get rolling a little bit and I get some experience in the servers instead of waiting because some ass decided to do a DDoS attack. Anyway, that stuff aside, thank you very much for coming in if you're new. And let's get into it. Okay, let's quickly recap last week's action. We had a bunch of stuff shake down. Let's talk East first, because the East is weird. Crazy stuff happened, kind of, I guess, if you want to call it crazy. Unexpected stuff, at least for me. The normal stuff that we were expecting to happen happened. Seoul won their games. Shanghai as well. Guangzhou lost to Seoul, but beat Philly. Philly went 0-2 this week. It's really non-consequential, minus like seeding, moving up and down and around kind of things. What we're more concerned with in the East is the Valiant and the Charge. The Valiant went 2-0. I did not expect that. The Valiant have been playing a little bit better. They played Chengdu and Hangzhou, Hangzhou's kind of like getting Changgooned. It's late season Changgoon time. Hangzhou's a mess. We'll talk about more of them at the beginning of next week. Chengdu is kind of odd. They lost 2 games, but they're still kind of they're like Philly. They're not going to go anywhere out of the play-in, playoff range in the East. So what's going to happen is, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, Valiant and Guangzhou are on a collision course. Guangzhou's hanging ahead of them by a thread because they got into the tournament last time around, and they got an extra point. They have the exact same record, and map differential is in the favor of the Valiant. Remember, beginning of the year, they had a lot of 3-2 losses, the Valiant. Guangzhou got buried a lot in the beginning of the year, so they're up like 5 maps on Guangzhou. The problem is Guangzhou has the point where it counts from being in the tournament, and they're 1 point ahead. But they play this week. Fantastic. That's the one good thing about the round robin in the East. Every team's going to play each other and kind of create their own destiny. So this is a huge match coming up. Valiant Charge. Never thought I'd say that. But here we are. Anyway, I never thought the Charge would have kind of righted the ship, but you can see a little bit personnel-wise, and the Valiant did pick up a couple guys too. So we got that going on over in the East. I think the Dragons are fine. Philadelphia is Philadelphia. They're going to fucking fusion this all the way to the end. I'm sorry, guys, that are fans, but they're going to make you go, yeah, that's the fusion I know, and then 2 minutes later, or 2 matches later, you're going, what the fuck happened? That's just the fusion way. But East is kind of its normal wackiness. I was not expecting much out of Hangzhou after seeing them in the last, honestly. I was on their gravy train, picks-wise, in the first tournament with a kickoff clash. I had a little more faith in them. I'm losing faith as the year goes on because of their coach is a wackadoo. He did it with Seoul. He's doing it with these guys. The one bonus with Seoul is you have Alpha Yi and Shy, but at the point he was there, you had gesture profit fits. You could work around that. That propelled you a little bit more is what I should get at. I don't think the Sparks roster is quite on that level. Alpha Yi and Shy, possibly. I think it still comes down to, for me, in the East, Seoul, Shanghai. It's looked like that all season, and for parts where the Dragons were kind of weird, maybe not. It was Philly and Hangzhou were in there challenging Seoul a little bit, but I think we're starting to get the wackiness under control. The top two are kind of neck and neck to me. That middle chunk in the East is almost wackier than the West. In the West, we had some things shake out that were, what we expected, minus, the one thing I did not talk about, and we're going to talk about it really quick, the return of Stryker to the Shock. He didn't look terrible. He's Stryker. He's good. He was playing Sombra against Toronto. I watched some of that match. I expected the Shock to win that 3-2, but Toronto comes out and beats them 3-1. The Shock are messing around with things, I think, testing things out, seeing what the boundaries are in some of these metas and things like that, what they could play. And I think they're resting guys, too. It's not going to kill you to rest guys. You're up pretty high in the standings. But there was a certain point where you can't take too many losses where it's going to hurt your seeding and all that, which you don't want. Because the Fuel have overtaken them by 1 point and one map. Gladiators are within 1 point. So, the Shock did right it against Atlanta, who is tied right now point-wise with the London Spitfire. We kind of thought that they could take them over. Depending on what they do against the Mayhem this week and the Fuel, that's going to determine whether or not they can get ahead of Houston, who plays Dallas as well in a live match. And we know what happened the last time. Houston beat them pretty bad. I don't know if that's going to happen this time, but, the Outlaws got one. They got Paris as well. They got one real match this week. So the Reign got to beat Dallas, and they have to beat Mayhem, and then Houston has to lose one of their matches. I don't see them losing to Paris because Paris is god-awful. And, it comes down to the Dallas-Houston match. As far as if you're looking at it from the Reign's eyes. The Reign has to take care of their business. They could go into the Dallas game on Sunday afternoon with a chance to be able to best the Outlaws. But to me, it's not looking probable. Because next week, Outlaws have Mayhem and Toronto. There's a possibility they could stay stagnant, but the Reign are done. They control their own destiny. As far as seeding goes, they're all in the East. After this week's action, where we had, once again, the meta kind of not fleshing itself out, but you saw a lot of different looks from teams playing what they're good at. Standings-wise, everybody that's involved, and it's been this way for a couple of weeks too, it's not like it's changed. The chances of New York and or Vancouver or Paris even remotely touching the play-ins is non-existent. They needed a miracle, and they did not get it. Even with Boston losing and stuff like that, Boston still has 3 points on Vancouver, which you don't think that's a lot, but if Vancouver gets in there, it's going to be a miracle of miracles, and DP should be given Coach of the Year for that. The top 3 seeds are locked in to the playoffs, and then 4 through 10, they're all in as far as either play-ins or. I think what my scenario is really, I feel as though it's pretty well set, minus seeding. Top 6, I think, is not going to change. You might have the Defiant possibly sneak in ahead of Atlanta. They have a shot, but they have to wait and see what happens, obviously, after this week, because they have the Mayhem and the Outlaws left. And we talked about Atlanta, and Atlanta has Dallas, and then before that they play the Mayhem. If you're a Toronto fan, you're hoping for a loss here Maybe 2 would help you. Probably 2 would help you out. You'd have a chance to flip-flop them, get in the playoffs, knock Atlanta down. But I think we're kind of pretty well set after this week's action as far as what we're looking at. Obviously, minus seeding. Seeding is going to be here and there. Teams could possibly move up and down. The biggest thing we have going on right now is the Guangzhou Charge and the Valiant situation, where there's 1 point separating, one team gets in, one team gets knocked out. We go from there then. They play this week. I mean, there is a chance to fix things in the final week if one of them jumps up, jumps down in that scenario. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That's kind of the recap I have of the week. We saw a couple of teams, like I said, falter a little bit. I don't know what's going on with the Shock. I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, if you're a Shock fan, yeah, it's a little concerning. They lost. I think that was the first time they lost 4 games in a row since 2018, when they were fielding guys like Nomi and Sleepy and that whole scenario in the Wayback Machine before they got Super and all that stuff. That's my take on Week 22, or the second week of action in the Countdown Cup. Now let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Week 23. We got, like I said, we got big matches. Let's talk East first, and then we'll talk West. Now, obviously, we have some big matches, seeding stuff, and all that going on in the East. Now, one of the things we got to concern ourselves with in the East coming up this week, we have Philadelphia, who's tied record-wise, but 2 points ahead of Hangzhou. Hangzhou seems kind of a mess to me right now. I talked about it a little bit earlier. They don't look the same as they did, and it seems to be going in the same direction, minus Shy and Alpha Yi, who are phenomenal. The rest of it's just a jumbled mess to me. It doesn't seem cohesive. Philadelphia is not helping their cause out by doing their normal Philadelphia thing. They're going to take this down to the wire, but they got to win at least one game. I think it is possible this week to get in that top 3 and stay out of the play-ins, which I think they can do because they have Chengdu and they have Seoul, and Hangzhou has Seoul and Chengdu as well. But I think Philadelphia has a better chance of winning one of those 2 games with a possibility of giving Seoul a little bit of a fight, potentially winning, doing the normal Fusion thing. Like, don't be surprised if Fusion lose to Chengdu, beat Seoul. That could be a normal Fusion scenario here. Spark, I think they go 0-2. Chengdu isn't the greatest, but I think right now they could beat the Spark the way the Spark are playing. As far as the one match that really matters in this whole crazy scenario, the Valiant and the Charge, I don't want to spend too much time on this one, but because honestly, they're not the greatest teams. It's a small division. They probably would be with the Vancouvers and the New Yorks and the Parises in the West, possibly in the Boston range. Hard to say. But I really think, in all honesty, I think Guangzhou has improved their roster enough and a lot over the course of the time. They've been picking up the guys that have been dropped either for financial reasons, like with Aprita and Xerneas. I think Piggy's a big pickup too. And then you got Choi Se-Wan. Far away they picked up all these guys, and they've worked them into a rotation where they got rid of some of the crap, I guess you could call it, and got these guys in here, and they're looking pretty good. Do they look great? Not by any stretch, but the more they work together, these guys were touted. If you think about it, Xerneas and Aprita and Faraway on Chengdu, they were a contender at the beginning of the year before they had their issue with those guys on there to be in fighting for the lead. So, the Guangzhou Charge picked these guys up. They look better. They're going to do some more stuff here if they keep this roster, like in the future, next year, etc. I think it looks pretty good. The Valiant, they've picked some things up. They lost No Hill. They're in a weird situation, man. I'm surprised that they went 2-0 last week. After seeing all the stuff and just conditions and the hearsay and the what have you and all the stuff that I don't know a ton about, to be honest. They have some players, they have some guys that can be good. Marv 1, we like Marv 1, and he can do some stuff for them, and he has been a little bit, but you got Dia in there, you got their roster's not great. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know how they pulled off that 2 wins to me. It makes And maybe it's me being naive. I don't know. I really, in this one, I'm leaning towards the Guangzhou Charge to take care of business, and then we'll see what happens next week in the wacky world of the East. As far as the West goes, a couple of big matches. We have the live match. We have Dallas and Houston. Does it mean much? More for Houston standing-wise. You don't want to give the Rein any breathing room, in my estimation. The Rein have a chance to either go up and jump ahead of the Outlaws and knock down London as well, who are off this week. The Spitfire, that is. And then they have two matches. They have New York and San Francisco final week. We'll see if they can maintain or go up higher depending on what Atlanta does in their final week. So there's a lot of the script is going to be written. Seeding is the big issue here, minus a little bit of chance for Atlanta to drop down. A little bit of chance, in my view. And a chance for Toronto to have some hope to get up. I mean, Toronto is only 1 point behind them. Mayhem and Justice are both 2 or 3 points behind Atlanta. But I don't envision a scenario where Atlanta is going to get overtaken by either Washington or Florida. There could be a scenario where Toronto overtakes them, but they're part of the bigger matches of the week, the Rein. They kind of usually are. Big match between them and the Mayhem. Obviously, Atlanta beats the Mayhem. They keep them down low. Florida will be 0-3 at that point in the Countdown Cup. Just keeping them above water, maybe knocking them down to 9-10, possibly the bottom of the whole scenario. Mayhem win, which I don't see it the way they've been playing, to be honest, in this matchup. Atlanta has the players, honestly, the guys that can have their heroes and everything just lined up for them in this meta. And it's a good way for Atlanta to distance themselves from the Mayhem. The biggest match of the weekend, seeding-wise to me, is going to be the Fuel and the Outlaws at the live event. Outlaws, to me, have not looked great in points, but they're playing decently in certain situations. They did beat the Shock, but we don't know what the Shock's mindset was in that whole thing. You got to remember, too, the Outlaws are working around a couple of different things. The Outlaws are going to have to rely a little bit more on Doge. They got rid of Piggy and all that. Dante's still doing some stuff here and there, playing a little diva and this and that. But I really think that Dallas is hitting their groove. Hanbin has been phenomenal the last 2 stages. He's in line for MVP. They're playing coordinated. They have, it's like they flipped a switch. Maybe it was my encouragement at the beginning of the summer showdown where I said, hey, Dallas is better than you guys think. And I think that Dallas in this, they're at a live event. I think they want to give the Outlaws some problems here. They got embarrassed the first live event in Texas. This is the second run of this made-up rivalry scenario, which it becomes kind of a rivalry. It's more the fans than the players in this, but I'm looking at Dallas dominating as they have been, Houston trying to find their footing, but it's not, all hope is not lost for Houston. I think there's scenarios where you could possibly say Houston gives Dallas a match. I don't necessarily think they're going to in this one. For me, it's more of Dallas is just on a roll. They're clicking. They are just in a groove. Houston's trying to find their footing, get the right combos in there, get ready for the playoffs, where Dallas is just hitting full throttle right now. Yeah, they are putting guys in, subbing guys out. You're seeing, some stuff, but they're not missing a beat, which is fantastic if you're a Fuel fan, because no matter what rotation they're putting in there, they're looking decent. Live event, I don't see a scenario where either team is going to be trying to rest people for this. It's a good practice run, too, for what's to come if they get to Anaheim and the playoffs. Obviously, if Dallas is in. But when we get to that week when we're in Anaheim and we're live the whole time, and you're on stage and you're playing LAN and you're doing all that, or at least until you get to that point on the weekend, you're feeling the pressure, you're experiencing it more, and the more they get comfortable, especially Dallas, because they did look terrible in the first one, they've gotten better and better since these playoff scenarios. What I'm getting at is I think Dallas is going to be dominant in this one. Those are kind of the matches that I was looking at for this week. Now, it's time for my Week 23 pick'ems. All right, we're going to go right down through the list like we normally do. I'm going to fire them off in rapid succession. Last week was not terrible, but it wasn't the best week I've ever had. Let's just put it that way. A couple scenarios screwed me up. We talked about some of it. The Valiant doing their thing, kind of wrecking me a little bit as far as picks go. I had Chengdu, obviously. I lost that one. I had Hangzhou squeaking out against them, and that obviously didn't happen. West-wise, I thought Toronto could handle business against Vancouver, and San Francisco could handle business against Toronto, but I got both of those wrong. And those are really it is what it is. You don't know what's going to happen towards the end of the year. Pressure, not giving a fuck, the whole list of scenarios. But anyway, off of that, let's talk about Week 23. We're going to do the East first, and then we're going to hit the West. So here we go. East region, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, October 7th. We have the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Hangzhou Spark. I have Seoul winning that 3-0. Second match of Friday, we have the big match that we talked about a little bit in the East. LA Valiant, Guangzhou Charge. I like the Charge in a close 3-2 here. I just think that they're a little bit better. I know it's going to be a tight match. It's hard to say, what's going to happen because these teams are so up and down and all over the place. But I like the Charge. I think they're a little bit better than the Valiant right now. Moving on to Saturday, starting at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Hangzhou Spark taking on the Chengdu Hunters. I think the Sparks' woes continue here. I like the Hunters 3-2 in this. Next up, Dragons, Valiant. I got to go Dragons in this 3-1, even though the Valiant are playing better, and they surprised some people last week. The Dragons are focusing in on the playoffs and all that, getting the ship righted, so to speak. Not righted, but, just getting more playtime and just racking up wins and trying to stay in that top 2, top 3, which they're going to do anyway. But I just think the Dragons are too much for the Valiant, even on a bad day for the Dragons. Final match of Saturday, Fusion, Hunters. I like the Fusion in this 3-2. Let's move on to Sunday. 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time once again. We have the Dragons taking on the Chengdu Hunters. I like the Dragons 3-2. Final match of the weekend in the East. Seoul Dynasty, Philadelphia Fusion. I like the Dynasty 3-2. I'm giving Philadelphia one more mat than I should because I think that they're going to be ready to go, and it's just they're not going to be enough. They're not going to have enough for the Dynasty. But we also talked about the normal Fusion scenario where I could be wrong on both matches, and we could have Chengdu beating Fusion and the Fusion beating the Dynasty. That's a very probable scenario. So let's move to the West. Here we go. Starting off, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday. We have the Houston Outlaws taking on the Paris Eternal. I have Houston 3-0. Enough said there. Next match, Washington Justice, Boston Uprising. Big seeding matchup here. I like the Justice. The Justice are looking better. It's hard for me to say, but I'm going to take them 3-1 in this match. Final match of Friday. We had the Vancouver Titans taking on the Florida Mayhem. I like the Mayhem 3-2 in a close one. Closer than it should be if you're a Mayhem fan. If you're a Titans fan, you're looking for a win in this one. Mayhem are down, you're up. But I still think the Mayhem have some stuff to play for, as well as the Titans. But I like the Mayhem a little bit better in this. Moving on to Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mayhem Rein we have to start the day off. I like the Rein 3-1. Too much to handle for the Florida Mayhem in this one. Next up, we have the Gladiators, who have rebounded and seem to be playing really well again, taking on the Washington Justice. I like the Glads in this one 3-1. Just too much for the Justice right now. And then we have the final match of Saturday, the live match in Texas. And it's also our double points match in the West. So we have the Dallas Fuel taking on the Houston Outlaws. I like the Dallas Fuel
3-0.
That's right. They're going to shut them out. 3-0. Dallas Fuel. Moving on to Sunday. Sorry, Houston fans. It's just the way it is. Moving on to Sunday. First match of the day. We have what could have been considered the toilet bowl in the first stage. We have the Vancouver Titans taking on the Paris Eternal. I like Vancouver 3-0. Paris is a mess. Let's not talk about them. Moving on. Dallas Fuel. Atlanta Rein. Dallas takes this one 3-1. Just too much for Atlanta. Final match of the weekend. We have the Gladiators taking on the Uprising, and I like the Gladiators 3-0. All right. There you have it, guys. Those are my pick'ems. Here they are up on the screen. And that's going to do our Week 22, Week 23 combo episode. I wanted to get an episode in there and talk. I know everybody's excited playing the game. I haven't played a match yet. I'm itching to get in there and not be DDoSed fucking into a 40, I think I got on and it was a 40,000 person queue. Anyway, by the time, like I said, by the time I got into the game, it was well into the night, and I looked at a couple of things, checked out the battle pass and all that, and by the time I got to that, I didn't feel like playing because I was annoyed and it was late, and you know the whole scenario. But anyway, that's going to do it, guys. Next week, we're going to have 2 episodes going in, possibly a third. We'll talk a little MVP. We got the MVP. We'll get into that more in depth next week. Separate episode. I'll talk about it somewhere between Monday and Friday next week. We'll squeeze that one in there. All right, guys. That's going to be it. Thanks very much. If you've been supporting me for 1 day or 5 years, thank you very much. It's been greatly, greatly appreciated. If you're new and made it to the end of the video, thank you very much. Please hit a like, hit a subscribe. All the YouTube jazz. Helps me out in the algorithm madness, which is kind of screwed up now because I had a little hiatus unplanned. We talked about that. Watch the last episode. I go over it a little bit. Anyway, thanks very much. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe. Have a good rest of your day. And I will talk to you on the next one.